tonight's big stories. The Justice Department is preparing to brief President Marcos on all his legal options related to the International Criminal Court, which is being seen as a signal that the administration may be changing its stance.
And now the sons are getting into it. Presidential son and Ilocos Norte Representative Sandro Marcos speaks up and comes to the defense of his mother after Davao City Mayor Baste Duterte insulted the First Lady at a rally.
And Defense Secretary Gibo Teodoro says that China claiming that it has audio recordings of discussions on a new model in the Ayungin Shoal violates Philippine laws.
Good evening. Welcome to the show. I'm Regina.
I'm Gretchen.
And I'm Shawn.
The big news that broke just this afternoon is that the Justice Department is preparing a brief for President Marcos on the possible scenarios related to the International Criminal Court. Here's DOJ spokesman Attorney Miko Clavano.
We're preparing a briefer on the legal options available to the President in relation to any ICC arrest warrants, with an awareness that the policy frameworks may evolve. The briefer will be an objective analysis on the pros and cons of each option, but we would like to emphasize that the stance has not changed. We just want the President to know all his options and all the implications as well.
The Department of Justice insists that the government's position remains the same, which is not to cooperate with the ICC. Just a few weeks ago, Marcos himself said he won't hand former President Duterte over if the ICC issues a warrant. But the fact that, as Attorney Clavano said, they want to prepare President Marcos over all his legal options is fueling rampant speculation that the administration is changing its tune.
The DOJ won't say exactly what scenarios they are considering, but Assistant Justice Secretary Clavano said that they will look into whether the Philippines has a legal duty to cooperate with the ICC and whether the country should return to the court as a member.
Right now, the stance is that we will not coordinate and cooperate with the ICC, no? So, yun po yung current stance natin ngayon, but just like any legal counsel to a client will do, they will exert due diligence, no, in presenting to their client all the possible options available. At yun po yung ginagawa ho natin ngayon.
Asa Clavano also said that they can't say when they will be able to finish this briefer for the president.
It's hard to give a timeline right now. There are certain provisions in treaties that we have to be discussed as well. Our international obligations, and as well as, if we do stick to our stance, what are the legal justifications as well, the legal backing that we have to pursue any of these options.
And on our sister program StoryCon this afternoon, Senator Bato de la Rosa was asked about what he thought of the DOJ preparing for, quote, all scenarios when it comes to the ICC.
Wala kaming magagawa dyan kung magbago ang posisyon ng Pangulo as far as that issue is concerned. Ilang beses na yan, sinabi niya, hindi niya papayagan ng ICC na magpapasok dito at hindi siya papayag na ang gobyerno ng Pilipinas ay mag-cooperate sa ICC. Papalik-balik niya sinabi yan. Pero kung magbago yung isipan niya, wala magawa namin.
Before all of this broke, former President Duterte was in Dumaguete for yet another prayer rally organized by his supporters. And in his speech, he lambasted who else? President Marcos and the International Criminal Court. Marimon Reyes with the story.
This was the warm welcome given by supporters to former President Rodrigo Duterte during the prayer rally held in Dumaguete City's Freedom Park on Tuesday. The gathering pushed through even after the city government revoked their protest permit. The LGU has yet to comment on the matter. Similar to previous prayer rallies organized by the Duterte camp, the former president did not mince his words in talking about President Marcos and his administration's push for charter change.
So wag kayong pumasok sa tsa-tsa at wag kayong pumayag. Kasi pag ginalaw yan, wala nang katapusan. Wag mo nang galawin ang konstitusyon kasi magkagulo talaga tayo. Do not ever believe na ikaw yung exception. So, Bongbong Marcos, wag kang, ako, advice. Hindi naman kita iniinsulto, pero yung para sa akin, yung performance mo is or was until now and still is a dismal failure. Hindi lang mahal ang bigas. Ang issue ngayon is gutom ang Pilipino. Yun ang dapat nilang bigyan ng atensyon.
The former president also addressed news of a supposed forthcoming arrest warrant to be served by the International Criminal Court or ICC. This is in connection to the alleged human rights violations committed under his administration's war on drugs.
Nasaan kayo yung panahon na kailangan namin ng tulong mo? Kayo. Tapos pupunta kayo dito, bastos yung ginagawa ninyo. Bastos yan ko kayo. Bakit sila pupunta dito tapos maghusga? Anong nagawa nila sa akin? Sa atin? Wala!
Former presidential spokesman Harry Roque earlier said that Duterte remains unbothered by speculations of an impending arrest. Their camp has insisted that the ICC has no jurisdiction over the Philippines. The ICC is expected to issue arrest warrants in batches by June or July. Mobile Journal Marymon Reyes, we are One News.
Joining us tonight to talk about the significance of DOJ preparing a brief for President Marcos, we have with us ICC Assistant to Counsel, Attorney Kristina Conti. Attorney Conti, thanks for making time for us again tonight.
Yes, good evening.
Attorney Conti, your audio is a little bit soft. Can we try that again? Can you hear us okay?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Fantastic.
Is
Loud
this
and
better?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right.
So you heard our top story tonight, and the reason this is making headlines is because this seems to be the first concession, if I can call it that, from the administration that they need to study all their legal options, that they need to prepare the president for all scenarios. Help us put this into context. Are we just reading too much into it, or is this a real pivot?
Well, for us, this is a significant development considering that President Marcos made several statements already. And then at one point, he seemed to be flip-flopping. There was one point when he said, oh, we're going to study returning or signing back again onto the Rome Statute. So that was a surprise for us that it appears when President Marcos came into his position, into the presidency, he was quite, well, I can't say unaware, but he was not fully abreast of the details of this issue. In fact, if you look back during his campaign, it turns out that there was very few information that he sent out. And in fact, there was no clear indication of what his position was on this issue during the campaign. And this offer or this instruction for the DOJ to make a briefer is very much welcome. Finally, he will have to come to terms with the various jurisprudence regarding this issue, as well as the political ramifications of not cooperating with the ICC.
You're right. For most of his term, President Marcos was adamant that they're not going to cooperate with the ICC. As recent as 2 weeks ago, he said they're not going to hand former President Duterte over if the ICC comes with the arrest warrant. But now you have DOJ spokesman, Attorney Miko Clavano, saying the frameworks may evolve. What did you make of this?
That's interesting because, yes, these policy frameworks could very well include the Philippines rejoining the ICC, cooperating with the ICC, or in any shape or form, agreeing to this investigation. There's many ways to interpret this wording, this clause. But for us, it could only turn for the better. Because right now, for the victims, we're at, rock bottom, we're at the worst position. Well, less worse in a sense because it's not Duterte in power. But right now, we have the president, as you said, adamant on not cooperating with the ICC. With this briefer, best case scenario is that he will change his mind. And if he doesn't change his mind, then it will just remain the same. So for us, the victims, this is welcome in one sense.
Okay, well, since we had you last on the show, Attorney Conti, which was less than 2 weeks ago, I believe, we were talking, and you were talking to us about timelines, about the possible timelines of the release of arrest warrants. And since then, one person has been very noisy about the ICC. I'm talking about former Senator Antonio Sonny Trillanes, who says that he sort of has a line with the ICC. Can you confirm or deny whether his info on the timeline actually hits the spot?
Well, we have a little bit of problem with speaking in behalf of the ICC, because at this point of the investigation, the ICC will not confirm nor deny anything that anyone who is in contact with says. So that is a precarious dilemma for both Senator Trillanes and us, because even if we were to say that we are cooperating with the ICC, who's to say that we aren't? But on the part of Senator Trillanes, I would tend to believe that he can confirm this information, even if he is not privy to some information from the ICC, because he is in contact with the police or military officials themselves. I would tend to believe that Senator Trillanes has had contact with Matubato, Las Cañas, and among themselves, they would be in touch with several active or retired police and military officials. So he can confirm this on two fronts. One, as part, or as he says, he claims to be part of the investigation. And on the other hand, those who are being investigated, he knows them as well.
So this is in relation to what Senator Trillanes mentioned as he's hearing that warrant of arrest will be issued by June or July. Right now at this point, you have no information as to whether we are about to reach the point where warrants will be issued. No information yet?
I have no information that could be verified, or I cannot go on record as regards the investigation, because really, one of the caveats of participating in the processes is that at this point, all matters regarding arrest warrants, subpoenas, witnesses is confidential. Everything should be confidential for the safety of those the ICC is in touch with. However, I would say that according to the process, the period, the timeline would seem reasonable. In the ICC, there is a sort of limit, or there's a regular period of about 120 days before the court is deemed to have lapsed on its duty to act on something. 120 days is about, 4 months? So that's 1 quarter. And the period of the processing of the application of the warrant of arrest, the issuance of the warrant of arrest, and implementation of the warrant could very well fall within those first quarter, second quarter terms that Senator Trillanes says.
Tell us a little bit
more.
more.
But for us, what we can say is that we are expecting a warrant of arrest within the year.
Tell us a little bit more about the nature of this warrant of arrest. For one, is it bailable? What are the options for those who are issued the warrant of arrest?
And the charge is, crimes against humanity, correct?
Yes, crimes against humanity in acts of murder, or they could also include other inhumane acts. So, to also include abuses and torture and illegal arrests. In the ICC, actually, if I may backtrack a little bit, they can issue 2 types of these so-called warrants. It could be a warrant of arrest, which is an order to take a person in custody, and a summons, which is an order for this person to appear before the court and give information, probably. So summons or warrant of arrest. And these 2 instruments could be issued even during an investigation, as soon as the court determines that this person has committed or is probably responsible for crimes against humanity in a particular territory. So for us, even before the investigation, we firmly believe that there is sufficient evidence to issue a warrant of arrest or a summons at least for President Duterte to provide information. If the investigation, the thing is with the investigation is that right now the scope of the situation in the Philippines is broad. It starts from November 2011, ends March 2019. From November 2011 to, well, June 2016. It talks about Davao in particular. And then from July 2016 to March 2019, nationwide. The scope is broad, and during the investigation, it could be narrowed down. So that is what I'm not sure of, because it depends on the witnesses and the evidence that would point to the possible perpetrators. For the ICC, and here's a problem as victims, what we know of are those who committed the killings on the ground. Kumbaga, yung kumalabit ng gatilyo. So we know who the shooters are, we know who the policemen who conducted the operation are, the team leaders, etc. The foot soldiers, so to speak. But somebody has to connect the killings on the ground to the masterminds. And that is what we're not quite sure of at present. How many and who are these insider witnesses that the ICC have already talked to or are already keeping in their custody. But we trust that the ICC will eventually pull together the best case possible for justice for all of the victims. So essentially, I would say that the scope of the investigation could go smaller. It could be more limited in scope. And so there could be some areas where there is no proof or connection between the killings and the quote-unquote masterminds.
And these two kinds of warrants, both the arrest warrants and the warrants for summons, these are both to be enforced by the PNP if it comes to that?
Yes, it has to be enforced by the PNP. And if ever you would apply for bail, as you mentioned, you would have to apply that before the court, but you have to be in custody. It is the court which will determine if there is grounds to allow you to leave the premises, if they would allow you to be, or if they would investigate you in non-custodial matters or non-custodial circumstances. So the PNP's role in all of this is crucial, or I would also like to add the NBI's role because of their role in the Interpol. They're the lead agency that coordinates with the Interpol. And the Interpol has a cooperation agreement with the ICC. The Interpol for information about the whereabouts of these wanted persons, but the PNP in particular, or the local police, to implement or to serve the warrants. There is this possibility, and I'm looking at that now, for the Interpol to come in and to send a specialized team. They do that in certain cases, and I'm just not sure if this possible arrest of, say, President Duterte would qualify, considering that he has, I think he's made several statements that he will not be caught alive. And then if the police come in or the ICC comes in, he will massacre all of them. So with those threats, I think it would have to be enforced by the best team possible, and that would include Interpol agents.
DOJ spokesman Attorney Miko Clavano says they will be preparing President Marcos over all his possible legal options with regard to the ICC. In our simple, non-legal minds, there are only two options here. One is Interpol serves the warrant, PNP cooperates and serves it to former President Duterte or the other suspects, and the other option being they don't cooperate at all. Is there a third alternative here as far as the legal options of President Marcos?
Well, I would say that those are the options.
There's
Technically, it's just the PNP that could cooperate. We're just looking at possible scenarios where there is support to the PNP. So either the PNP serves the warrant or implements the warrant, or it doesn't. When it serves the warrant, will it need help? Will it be assisted by somebody else? And On the decision of whether to serve the warrant or not, there we can find the, well, political issues. For example, do we serve the warrant because it is requested by another country with whom we have an extradition request? Do we serve the warrant because of an Interpol request? Do we serve the warrant because of ICC? Or do we serve the warrant out of goodwill and in consonance with international obligations? So those are matters that I think should be included. But bottom line, yes, there's two options: either the PNP serves the warrant or it doesn't. I think if we're leading at the possibility that someone else, say, the US or sino pa bang police pangkalawakan, the US or some other police force comes in and extracts Duterte, I would say that would not be possible or should not be in the cards.
Because it's technically not legal.
Yes, it's not legal, and that would be a violation of our sovereignty.
Right,
Because it would be against our will, essentially.
Right, because as President Marcos keeps pointing out, we do have a fully functioning judicial system. We're going to have to leave that there for tonight. As always, thanks so much for helping us make sense of things. ICC Assistant to Counsel Attorney Kristina Conti.
Right now, circling back to our top story, and this has been in the headlines for a while now, the Duterte-Marcos family feud is also playing out among the younger generation. Now, at that same rally in Dumaguete City, Davao City Mayor Baste Duterte, like his father, hit the Marcos family, specifically First Lady Liza Marcos. And today, presidential son and Ilocos Norte Representative Sandro Marcos spoke up and came to his mother's defense.
Tanawa ninyo ang interview ni Liza Marcos. Tanawa na ninyo. Nana sa interview, tanawa ninyo, mao nang dagway sa itong nasod karon.
My mother is not quite as used to it as we are, as the both of us. So, her reaction from that interview, I think that you've all seen, is, I guess, one of a wife who is being protective of her husband. So I think we can sympathize in that sense.
Mayor Baste also accused the Marcos family of wanting to cling to power, which the younger Marcos shrugged off.
Nana ta dire. Di man gud na ingonana ng kinabuhi ba. Gusto nila nga monopolya o nilang politika, unsa ba na ilang mga paboran nila dihang mga tao. Mo nay makaguba og nasod.
Regardless of what Mayor Baste says, I still have the utmost respect for him. I still consider him a friend. If he wants to talk to me about it, he's more than welcome to anytime. He has my number.
Well, up next, China says it has audio evidence of the so-called new model over Ayungin Shoal that the AFP Western Command agreed to. More on that when the big story returns. Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News.
China is now threatening to release an audio recording that it says proves that the Philippines agreed to a so-called new model on how to handle a Union shoal. If they really did record a conversation, Defense Secretary Gibot Teodoro says they then violated Philippine laws and should be kicked out. JC Cosico joins us now for the rest of the details on that. JC, what do you have?
That's right, Shawn. China has been insisting since last week that there is a new model agreed upon with the AFP Western Command that sets guidelines of conduct in the Ayungin Shoal. Key defense officials have since belied the claim, but now China claims they have an audio recording of the phone call where the deal was made. That's Philippine Navy spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea Commodore Roy Vincent Trinidad responding to questions about this new deal with China by singing the song Zombie. For him, this is a dead or a zombie story that should no longer be discussed.
We need not dignify such dead stories that have been revived from the grave. I will act as the undertaker now and bring that story back to where it rightfully belongs, to the grave.
Like the Navy, the Foreign Affairs and Defense Departments have also earlier denied China's claims. Defense Chief Gibot Teodoro even described the act as devious. Speaking to Bloomberg, some Chinese officials say they are now planning to release evidence that such agreement was made. Beijing says they hold a recording of the phone call with a Philippine military official. China has also earlier said this new deal was made with the AFP Western Command Chief Alberto Carlos. When asked about this, Teodoro says he doubts the existence of such. But if it turns out to be true, China is violating both international relations and the anti-wiretapping law of the Philippines.
Hindi sila nakipag-ugnayan sa Department of Foreign Affairs at sila'y umoperate na pailalim kung totoo ito. Kung ito talaga ay nangyari dahil ito ay gawain di umano ng Chinese Embassy mismo na paglalabag sa batas ng Republika ng Pilipinas, dapat alamin kung sino ang responsable dito at alisin sa Republika ng Pilipinas.
Teodoro also maintains that only President Marcos is allowed to enter into such agreements.
Walang binigay na pahintulot ang presidente o sino mang opisyal ng kabinete hinggil dito. Kaya mali ang pagtatahol ng mga opisyal di umano ng Chinese Embassy dito. Sana maliwanagan ang ating mga tao.
Under the Vienna Convention on Public Relations, diplomats or officials of foreign embassies have immunity in civil and criminal cases. But according to retired Associate Justice Antonio Carpio, violating officials could be kicked out of the Philippines and sent back to their home countries.
If they release that audio, they can be subject to, that's a violation of our criminal law. Unless the other party agreed to be taped. That's a crime under Philippine law. If that's committed by an embassy official of China who has immunity, we cannot prosecute, but we can expel him for violating our laws.
Shawn, as of now, Westcom Chief Vice Admiral Alberto Carlos has yet to issue a statement on the matter. He is currently on leave, but the AFP says this is for personal reasons and is not connected to this supposed new model agreement with China. Shawn?
Thanks so much for that, JC Cosico.
Still on the West Philippine Sea, the Atin Ito coalition will again sail to Scarborough Shoal next week to deliver provisions to Filipino fishers in the area. The convoy has grown to include 200 fishermen, volunteers, and members of the local and foreign press. Camille Samonte has the rest of that story.
West Philippine Sea, West Philippine Sea,
This is the floating device or buoy that the Atinto coalition will deploy in waters within the jurisdiction of Scarborough or Panatag Shoal next week. This is part of the activities organized by the coalition in relation to the second civilian mission of the group on May 14. According to co-convener Rafael David, there is no turning back on the plan. This will involve 200 fishermen, volunteers, and members of the local local and foreign press.
This is not a sightseeing mission or a sightseeing excursion to seek out Chinese marine vessels and or provoke them to attack us with water cannons. Kung ang China minimilitarize siya, tayong mga Pilipino, we're civilianizing it para nga ang mga talagang ordinaryong Pilipino ang merong access dito sa ating sariling karagatan.
4 trawler boats will lead the sailing of the civilian mission. Up to 100 boats will serve as escorts for what the group calls the Peace and Solidarity Regatta. Various groups of fishermen in Zambales have since expressed support for the civilian mission. According to Leonardo Quaresma, president of the New Masinloc Fishermen's Association, their boats, just 3 nautical miles from the entrance of Panatag, continue to be driven away by the Chinese.
Parang magnanakaw yung ating mga mangingisda na pumapasok para makapangisda doon sa loob ng shoal.
Although there are threats to the security and safety of those participating in the civilian mission, many said they are not worried about it.
Ay sanay na kami sa panganib. Katunayan, ang pag-angkin sa ating pangisda na siyang pinanggagalingan ng aming kabuhayan ay isang matinding panganib sa amin.
But what if China continues with its harassments to the coalition's boats? Former Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio had this to say.
This is like people power at sea. We are exercising our sovereign rights peacefully in our exclusive economic zone. I doubt if the Chinese will really target private vessels because we will take videos of that and spread that all over the world, and they will suffer a reputational damage.
The first Atinto convoy last December made it to the vicinity of Ayungin Shoal before sailing to Lawak Island, where they dispatched their supplies. The mission was cut short due to the presence of a Chinese missile destroyer, plus 3 other vessels taunting the convoy. A day before the convoy sailed, Chinese Coast Guard water cannoned and also rammed the supply ship Unaizame. For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
U.S. and Philippine troops successfully sank the decommissioned BRP Caliraya today during their maritime strike exercise under Balikatan. And Brian Casillo has been covering the exercises and joins us now. Brian, what do you have for us?
Gretchen, the strike exercises began past 8 this morning. Participating in the drills are ships, planes, and land assets of the Philippines and the U.S. These were used to strike or attack the mock target, that is the decommissioned ship BRP Lake Caliraya. The maritime strike exercise, which is part of this year's Balikatan, was conducted in Lawag, Ilocos Norte. The first one that took a shot was BRP Jose Rizal, a guided missile frigate of the Philippine Navy. They went after the mock enemy using a missile. This drone footage shows the first wave of attacks launched by BRP Lawrence Naraw. This fast attack interdiction craft of the Philippine Navy used spike missiles for its attacks. After a few moments, the target ship was already covered by thick smoke. Turns out the Sea Star surface-to-surface anti-ship missile has already hit the stern or the back part of the boat. The shot was made using the modern guided missile frigate BRP Jose Rizal.
The maritime strike composed of air, naval assets, and ground artillery with the mission of trying to prevent an aggressor from landing on the Philippine soil.
After the Navy vessels launched their offensive, the U.S. and the Philippine Air Forces came next for air strikes. Using air-to-ground missiles, the FA-50 attack aircraft of the Philippines targeted a larger part of the mock target vessel. At this point, the BRP Caliraya had listened to its side and is starting to sink. A few moments later, the stronger guided bombs from the F-16 fighter jets of the U.S. were launched. BRP Caliraya shook as the bomb hit. The U.S. Air Force's AC-130 aircraft also rained 105mm cannon shells over the ship. At this point, the damage from the barrage can already be seen on the deck of the target ship. On land, Atmos 155mm howitzers of the Philippine Army lined up at the La Paz sand dunes facing the sea. Once they received the cue, they started firing towards the direction of BRP Caliraya. By 10:49 a.m., most of the vessel is already underwater. The following moments were gripping as soldiers watched the BRP Caliraya slowly slip beneath the sea 2 hours after the attack started. The maritime strike exercises aim to strengthen the capabilities of the U.S. and the Philippines to integrate their land, water, and air forces. The AFP says this is huge for them, especially as the military is now shifting its focus from internal security to external defense.
It's a rare opportunity for all of us to work together, the Army, Air Force, and the Navy. As you may all know, our country have been preoccupied with insurgency, and now we have been shifting to territorial defense. It's just our job to defend the country to anyone, actually, not just for a specific person or country. With or without them, we're going to do this.
Gretchen, a fisherman, meanwhile accidentally entered the exercise venue, but was immediately sent out to the sea. The AFP says they will leave the BRP Lake Caliraya in its current location as the DENR has approved the location from where it was sank. Back to you, Gretchen.
All right, from the Balikatan exercises, thanks so much for that update, Brian Castillo.
After this quick break, we will be speaking with conservation scientist Dr. Petch Manopawitr about the extreme heat gripping parts of Southeast Asia this summer. He says an uninhabitable Earth pattern is coming. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News. Pag-asa says, and this is the good news, they said that the worst of the extreme heat for this year is over. But one conservation scientist in Thailand has warned that these extreme heat patterns gripping parts of Southeast Asia is a sign that the planet is slowly becoming uninhabitable. Joining us tonight to tell us more about that and what his studies show, and also, more importantly, what we can do to prevent it, we have with us on the big story tonight, conservation scientist Dr. Petch Manopawitr. Dr. Petch, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Are you joining us from Thailand?
Yes, greeting from Bangkok. Thanks for having me.
Right, so tell us right now how the situation is for you guys there in Thailand. I have some friends over there. They said it's really, really hot, and we've been trying to compare which is hotter, the Philippines or Thailand. But how is the current situation shaping up over there?
Yes, I think it's just really kind of hitting the ground in terms of the climate change impact, because as an Asian, I think we are very familiar with the hot weather, right? I think summer hot is no surprise to us, but I think it's becoming really unbearable hot this summer. And I think we have experienced that across the region. You know, I heard that in Philippines, you have to close down some of the school. I think in Myanmar is doing the same thing. And in Thailand, like even though we are so used to with the hot weather, but this year it's just getting unbearable and become a health hazard as well for people who be outside. So it's become very dangerous for people have to work who still have to work outdoor at this time of year.
Did you
And I
observe?
think it's all new for us, I think we have to get used to this new normal, although the peak, the hottest seem to pass. We also get some rain like yesterday for the first time. So that's helped bring temperature down a little bit. But I think the pattern overall, because we're just coming from the hottest year on the record, 2023, right? But this year it's set to be the hottest year on the record. So I think we have to really getting to be prepared for the new normal. And I think it's really something that is not in the far future anymore about the pattern of the weather that become uninhabitable to some region.
Dr. Patch, we've been talking to some scientists and they've been telling us that we actually predicted this, that temperatures will get hotter and hotter every year. What are you seeing in the data that led you to say that the extreme heat is causing some parts of the world to become uninhabitable and that we're headed there? Is there something, is there an outlier that you see, something more extreme that we, that is beyond just seeing temperatures rise every year?
Yep. I think the trajectory is very clear. So we are putting up the uncharted territory in terms of the new average temperature. But last year and this year, because we are in the El Nino year, so it's pretty much double effect in terms of bringing down the temperature become very extreme. So we experienced this heat wave across the region. But globally, also this year is only the fourth time that the NOAA, the scientific body of the U.S., has declared is the fourth global coral bleaching since we have the record. And I don't know about in the Philippines, but in Thailand also we have seen the news in Australia that the Great Barrier Reef again suffer mass coral bleaching. Over 75% of the reef already bleached in the Great Barrier Reef. And in Thailand, more than half of the coral reef now experiencing bleaching. It's not the end yet, although we hopeful that I think the rain that start to set in the country will help bring the temperature down. But undoubtedly, I think many coral reef already suffer quite a great damage from this year hot weather.
So we're seeing the impacts of climate change in real time. The question is, are any of these impact damages still reversible at this point? What can we do?
I think that's a big question, but we don't have any option because by doing nothing, I think it will just make the problem worse. I think it just really emphasized on climate action that all the government said that it's urgent, we need to do something. I think the time to act is now because the impact is already here. It's not something in the distant future that we are talking about. And I think more and more, I think Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, some of the top most vulnerable country from climate change is set in the region. So I think Southeast Asia as a community, we have a lot to lose. So I think it really have to bring home in terms of the climate action and also negotiation about the loss and damage as well. But closer to our action, I think what we can do is that I think with the heat that we are experiencing, I think it's just emphasizing the importance of nature-based solution. How do we use this kind of crisis into opportunity about saving all the nature that we still have left in our environment? Because when the extreme heat happen, you can compare to the area that still have some green area, the park, it's actually buffer quite a lot of heat. Singapore, for example, has a great green space. I think it helps buffer people from the impact of extreme heat. So in many countries in Southeast Asia don't have the luxury like Singapore. We don't have a great green area. But I think it is just, something that we can do now as a buffer, as a mitigation, and also adaptation measure for people living in the city.
All right, I was watching your video, Dr. Petch, and I saw that you had a heat map of a globe. There was like an image of the world, and you put like red spots where in places where it's, for lack of a better word, it's a hot spot, right, for all this climate change and for all the damage and destruction. When you say uninhabitable, a pattern of becoming more and more uninhabitable, what exactly does that mean? Does that just mean it's really, really hot? Does it mean temperamental weather or unpredictable weather? What exactly do you mean by uninhabitable?
I use that phrase, based on the climate change scenario, because the climate model already predict that this year going to set the new record in terms of the hot temperature. But globally, they also predict that in Southeast Asia in particular is a hotspot for this year because of the El Nino impact, part of South Asia and also part of the Caribbean. So it means that this year we are particularly vulnerable. But in the region, in country, I think, we can observe that some particular region suffer from severe drought year after year. So the area that used to be agriculture land may be not gonna be viable for farming anymore in the future. So this is something that happening right now, and I think in the city have even another impact like the heat island effect as well as the infrastructure in the city absorbing more heat. So we will start to rely more and more on air conditioning. And I think that also leave the problem with the marginalized group of people, vulnerable group of people who might not have access to air conditioning as a way to mitigate the heat. So I think some part of the city, some part of the region might not be suitable for living anymore. The sound of it may be extreme, but I think the glimpse of what future look like, I think warn us that, this kind of phrase, the uninhabitable earth pattern is not something in the far future anymore.
Yeah, all right.
Because our region get used to the hot weather. Now it's become quite unbearable. I never felt that hot like in the Middle East. I've been to the Middle East and you can feel that it's really warm. You like walking in the oven. And although in Southeast Asia we are hot, but we never get to that hot. But now, because of the relative humidity as well, making our hot weather become quite unbearable now and become quite dangerous as well.
All right. Well, definitely a lot of food for thought. Definitely a lot of things to chew on, especially for world leaders who are in control of policy. But we're going to have to end it there for tonight. Thank you so much for your time, for joining us. Conservation scientist, Dr. Petch Manopawitr.
In other news, President Bongbong Marcos witnessed the signing of a new pact between the Partido Federal ng Pilipinas and Lakas CMD for the upcoming May 2025 elections. Maricel Halili with the story.
As part of the preparation for the 2025 midterm elections, President Bongbong Marcos has revived the unit team. This was the alliance that helped President Marcos and Vice President Sara Duterte secure the highest positions in the government. The political party of PBBM, the Partido Federal ng Pilipinas, along with the party of former President and now Pampanga Representative Gloria Macapagal Arroyo Lakas CMD, signed an alliance agreement.
Bubuhin uli natin at formalize uli natin ang unit team para naman pagka humaharap tayo sa ating mga kinabukasan, malalaman natin na tayo ay sabay-sabay na nagtutulungan.
The two parties will merge to form a 12-member senatorial slate for the 2025 elections.
Kung hindi tayo nagkakaisa, nauubos ang oras natin sa debate, sa nagkokontra-kontra sa isa't isa. Ngayon, na nagkakaintindihan tayo, maganda naman ang plano natin, maganda naman ang ating ginagawa, wala naman tayong siguro naman nakikinig naman tayo sa taong bayan at yun ang pinakamahalaga.
Arroyo, who serves as the chairman emeritus of Lakas CMD, likewise gave her thumbs up for the alliance.
Well, as the President said, this is unity for the new Philippines, so that's a very good development.
Earlier today, House Speaker Martin Romualdez was seen paying his respects to Arroyo, a move that is seen as significant as Arroyo was demoted and removed from her position as Deputy Speaker. Arroyo had previously stated her continued support for Romualdez's leadership. The question now is, will they include Vice President Sara Duterte's party, Hugpong ng Pagbabago, in their alliance?
It's still open for discussion, and of course, we will consult with, of course, Partido Federal.
But have there been talks?
Not yet from our part.
VP Sara had been part of the Lakas CMD with Arroyo and Romualdez. However, she resigned from the party following the issue of Arroyo's demotion in the House of Representatives. According to Romualdez, they are open to any alliance, even with the party of former President Rodrigo Duterte, PDP Laban. But for now, they will finalize the candidates for the senatorial race in the 2025 elections. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
We still have a little time for our big picture tonight before we sign off. And here's a photo of people lining up in front of the BSP or Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas building in Manila. Question, why were they there? Well, apparently, somebody spread word that they can claim from the central bank supposed hidden wealth intended for the public. This man, Gilbert Langres, founder of Democratic and Republican Guardians Philippines, claims that the central bank is hiding a 19.5 trillion peso public fund. Most of those who lined up came from Regions 1, 2, and 4A. The BSP issued a statement denying such money was in the bank and said it does not directly distribute money to the people. After about an hour, the crowd decided to leave.
Is this another case of fake news?
Yeah, but the pictures don't quite show it, but there are actually thousands of people who turned up. And this is, it's quite sad because it's a case of fake news. There's underlying currents of, desperation, poverty, people clinging on to hope, right? That, okay, well, somebody says there's free money over there. The Bank Central is handing out free money.
You know where this is taking me back? It's taking me back to the campaign period before the 2022 elections where the supposed Yamashita gold exists and supposedly it will be handed out.
Related to the myth of the Taliano gold, right? The myth goes that there's money that's sitting in the central bank to the tune of $19 trillion, right? That's the Taliano gold. And that belongs to the people.
But I guess what's alarming is that it's not just hundreds, but thousands of people.
Exactly.
Who probably spent money to travel all the way.
Well, apparently they walked from Quirino Grandstand all the way to the Bangko Sentral, which is a fair distance. I don't know how many kilometers that is, but the point
under
is
the heat.
In this heat, exactly.
And most of those people supposedly came from Regions 1, 2, and 4A.
A lot of seniors too, which is quite sad. Again,
I wonder how the leader was able to convince everyone about
He showed a piece of paper apparently. It was crumpled up piece of paper, and then he was evasive when asked about where he got that
piece
document.
of paper.
I mean, none of the reporters got to see it up close. Basta he held it up, said this is proof that there's hidden wealth in the Bangko Sentral, and people believed him. But again, it's more a social story. The social aspects to this is what's sad about it. That people
quite
would believe.
unexpected on this day. Also with the breaking news that we got. A lot of unexpected news.
Yes, and as much as we don't like ending on a sad note, that is the note that we are ending tonight on. That's it for the big story tonight.
Is it sad or is it
It's
trivial?
a bit disappointing.
Trivial.
Yeah, the takeaway is the Bangko Sentral does not hand out money, period. Right? That's not how the Bangko Sentral works. And there is no Taliano gold. You heard it here first.
We hope they do.
Breaking news.
I broke it. Sige na nga. There's no Taliano gold.
That's it for the big story tonight. We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.